I stand in the carpeted hallway of my building. My scrubs cling to my back after a 12-hour shift coordinating commercial hospital leases. My feet ache, but I do not move to put my key in the lock. I just stare at the 6 heavy-duty black trash bags piled against my own front door. A sleeve of my dry-cleaned winter coat is sticking out of one bag. A stack of my personal tax files is spilling out of another. My entire life dumped in the corridor like garbage. Through the thick oak door, I hear the distinct sound of a jazz trio. I smell expensive catered salmon and roasted garlic. I hear glasses clinking. And then, loud and clear over the music, I hear my 32-year-old brother Julian laughing. He is telling someone about the imported Italian marble countertops he just installed in the kitchen. He is standing in my kitchen. The kitchen I paid for with my own commission checks. He is hosting a lavish engagement party for his new old-money fiancée, Victoria. And my parents are in there with him, playing the role of proud hosts, pretending that this $650,000 Chicago townhouse actually belongs to their golden child son. They packed up my belongings, locked me out, and erased my existence so Julian could impress a wealthy family. What they do not know is that my firm handles high-level real estate acquisitions. The mortgage lending company that financed this property is owned by my boss, and the legally binding notarized deed is sitting right inside my leather work bag. By trying to humiliate me in front of Chicago elite, my family walked blindly into a legal trap that will leave them exposed and out on the street. My name is Chloe. I'm 29 years old. Before I show you exactly how I dismantled their lies, welcome to Sweet Karma Life. Take a second to subscribe. Drop your age and the city you are watching from in the comments. I want to know who is with me today. Have you ever been treated like a second-class citizen in your own home? If you have, you will want to stick around for this one. To understand how my parents and my brother justified tossing me out into the hallway, you have to understand the dynamic we have played out for decades. There is always a script in my family. Julian is the star, the visionary, the one who just needs a little more time to make it big. I am the backup plan, the safety net, the one who pays the bills while they chase illusions. It started 2 years ago. I was 27, fresh off my best quarter as a broker. I had just closed on this townhouse. The paint was barely dry on the walls when my mother called me on a Tuesday night. Julian had tried to launch a cryptocurrency startup. It failed. His apartment building had just served him a 30-day eviction notice. My mother did not ask if I had the space. She told me Julian was moving into my guest room. Just for 3 months, she promised. Just until he gets back on his feet. You have that extra room, Chloe. It is the least you can do for your brother. 3 months. That was the timeline. I agreed because I wanted to keep the peace. I cleared out my home office. I bought him a new mattress. I handed him a spare key. I did not know that handing him that key was the beginning of a 2-year nightmare. I did not know he would slowly take over my space, drain my groceries, and use my success as a prop in his own fictional life. 3 months came and went. The calendar flipped from spring to summer, then autumn, then winter. My guest room stopped being a guest room. It became Julian's permanent domain. I paid my way through DePaul University, working nights at a leasing office. I skipped spring breaks and weekend trips to save every dime, eventually securing my broker's license and building a solid client list by age 26. I did not have a trust fund. I had grit. Julian had my parents. Richard and Susan always viewed Julian as the visionary of the family, even when his visions ended in disaster. He was the golden boy, the one destined for greatness, while my achievements were treated as mere footnotes. When I closed my first $1 million commercial deal, my father patted my shoulder and asked if I could look over Julian's new business proposal. Living with Julian was an exercise in silent erosion. He contributed nothing. 0 rent, 0 utilities, 0 groceries. I would come home at 8 o'clock at night, completely exhausted from a 10-hour day showing properties. only to find the salmon salads I'd carefully meal prepped for the week tossed into the garbage. They had been thrown out just to make room in the refrigerator for Julian's 3 dozen cans of energy drinks. And while I stood in the kitchen staring at my ruined food, he would be in the guest room screaming at his monitor through the noise-canceling headphones I had paid off on his credit card the month before. When I asked him to chip in for the electric bill, which had doubled since he set up his massive gaming rig, he would scoff. He told me I was being petty. He reminded me that he was on the verge of a massive crypto breakthrough, and that asking him for $50 was insulting his potential. I absorbed the cost. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family helps family. But the reality of his presence began to suffocate me. He treated my home like a high-end hotel with free maid service. He threw his laundry on the floor for me to step over. He left his expensive sneakers blocking the entryway. He played video games until 3 in the morning while I had to be up at 6 for client meetings. The tension shattered on a Tuesday morning last November. I was flipping through the mail when a thick envelope addressed to Julian from my parents popped open in my hands. Inside was a check for $2,000. The memo line read, November rent. I did the math. $2,000 a month, 12 months a year, for almost 2 years. My parents had secretly handed my brother nearly $48,000 intended for housing. He had pocketed every single cent to fund his illusion of wealth, all while I paid the mortgage and bought his groceries. I confronted them that night at dinner. I did not scream or debate the unfairness. I simply slid a standard lease agreement across the table to Julian. $1,500 a month, or a formal 30-day notice to vacate. My mother gasped, begging me to understand that Julian needed their money to keep up appearances in his elite social circles. I told them my boundary was non-negotiable. He had until Friday at 5 o'clock to sign it. Friday came and went. The lease remained exactly where I left it on the kitchen counter. Julian did not pack his bags. He did not apologize. Instead, the atmosphere in the house suddenly shifted. A brand new leased BMW appeared in my driveway. Julian had found a new target to fund his lifestyle. Her name was Victoria. In the Chicago real estate market, Victoria's last name acts like a skeleton key. Her father is a prominent commercial developer who owns half the mid-rise medical buildings downtown. The irony was thick. I coordinate corporate leases for hospital branches. Her father builds the towers those branches occupy. Julian knew nothing about commercial zoning, capitalization rates, or property management. But he knew how to read a room, and he recognized Victoria as a golden ticket out of his own failures. He needed a backdrop to sell his lie. He chose my life. The collision happened on a Wednesday afternoon. A heavy rainstorm had flooded a major intersection, causing my 2 o'clock client to cancel our property tour. I decided to head home early to catch up on paperwork. I pulled into the driveway. The leased BMW was parked crookedly near the garage. A silver Range Rover sat next to it. I grabbed my work bag, unlocked the front door, and stepped into the foyer. The house smelled like fresh espresso and expensive vanilla perfume. I could hear soft laughter coming from the kitchen. I kicked off my wet shoes and walked down the hall. Julian was leaning against my imported marble island, holding a glass of sparkling water. He wore a tailored navy blazer and a crisp white shirt. A blonde woman stood next to him, wearing a silk blouse and a delicate gold watch that cost more than my first car. My mother sat at the breakfast nook, sipping tea and beaming at the two of them like they were royalty. Julian froze when he saw me. The relaxed, confident posture evaporated for a fraction of a second. But my brother is a practiced liar. He recovered instantly, wrapping an arm around Victoria's waist and pulling her closer. "Victoria," he said, his voice smooth and loud enough to echo in the open floor plan. "This is my little sister, Chloe. She has been having a tough time getting on her feet lately, so I let her rent the basement suite to help her out." I stopped walking. I stared at him. I do not have a basement suite. I have an unfinished utility room and a finished lower level that serves as a secondary media room. I hold the deed to the property we were standing in. I pay the $650 mortgage. And my brother, who had not bought a single roll of paper towels in 2 years, had just introduced me as his charity case. Victoria offered a polite, practiced smile. She tilted her head in that specific way wealthy people do when they encounter someone they view as a subordinate. "It is so nice to meet you, Chloe," Victoria said. "Julian is so protective of his family. It is incredibly generous of him to give you a place to stay. Chicago rent is brutal right now. You are lucky to have a big brother looking out for you." I looked at the sparkling water in Julian's hand. I bought that water. I looked at the marble island he was leaning against. I picked out that stone. I took a slow breath. I opened my mouth to correct the record. I was going to state the facts. I was going to ask Julian why my parents were paying his rent if he owned the home. Before a single syllable left my lips, my mother shot up from the breakfast nook. The wooden chair scraped harshly against the hardwood floor. "Chloe, honey," my mother said, her voice strained and artificially sweet. "I am so glad you are home. Can you come help me find that silver serving platter in the hallway pantry? My hands are too clumsy today." She did not wait for an answer. She marched across the kitchen, grabbed my forearm, and pulled me into the hallway, out of Victoria's sight. The moment the kitchen wall shielded us, my mother dropped the sweet facade. Her fingers dug into my arm. Her eyes were wide, frantic, and desperate. "Do not do this," she hissed, keeping her voice to a harsh whisper. "Do not say a word." "Let go of my arm," I replied, keeping my own voice level. "What is going on?" "Julian is finally making something of himself," my mother whispered rapidly, glancing over her shoulder toward the kitchen. "Victoria's family is connected. Her father can get Julian a position at his development firm. He just needs to look the part. He told her he is an investor. He told her this is his primary residence." "He lied to her," I said, "and he is using my house to do it." "It is a white lie," my mother pleaded. "It gets his foot in the door. Once they are married, it will not matter." "But you cannot ruin this for him. He has one chance at a real future, Chloe. Do not be selfish." Selfish. The word hung between us in the dim hallway light. My mother pressed her advantage, mistaking my silence for submission. She started listing demands. "When Victoria is here, you need to stay downstairs," she instructed. "I need you to put away your designer work bags. Take your mail off the counter. Hide the espresso machine so she does not ask about it. You need to act like a tenant. Give him this one victory." I looked at her hand, which was still hovering near my elbow. I looked at her face, lined with anxiety over a web of lies she was actively helping to spin. She wanted me to erase my own success. She wanted me to become a ghost in the home I built from nothing, all to prop up a son who refused to build anything at all. "I will not hide my belongings," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I will not stay in the basement. I will not pretend to be a stranger in a house that I own." "Chloe, please," she begged, her eyes filling with manipulative tears. I stepped around her. I walked back into the kitchen. Julian tensed, his hand tightening on his glass. I ignored him. I walked straight to the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of cold brew, and turned to Victoria. "It was nice meeting you, Victoria," I said smoothly. "I have to get back to work. I broker commercial hospital leases and the paperwork never sleeps. Enjoy the house." I did not expose the lie right then. I simply established my own reality. I watched Victoria's brow furrow in slight confusion at my job title, a role far too lucrative for a struggling basement tenant. I watched Julian's jaw clench in silent fury. I walked down the hall to my master bedroom and closed the door. I thought I had won that round. I thought setting a firm boundary would force them to abandon the charade or take it elsewhere. I was wrong. By refusing to play the peasant voluntarily, I became a liability to their master plan. If I would not hide in the basement, they realized they would have to find a way to remove me from the house entirely. The engagement was approaching rapidly, and my family was already quietly preparing their next move. 2 weeks after that tense afternoon in the kitchen, the charade solidified into a permanent trap. A glossy silver envelope arrived in the mail. Julian had proposed. Victoria said yes. He managed to secure a diamond ring by draining the secret rent money my parents had been handing him for the past 2 years. He presented it to Victoria as a custom piece. The stakes instantly multiplied. A casual lie told over sparkling water had now become a contractual family merger. Victoria's father, Harrison, is a man who builds skylines. He is shrewd, calculating, and measures a person by their tangible assets. Harrison agreed to fund a lavish wedding, but he had one condition. Before he wrote a 6-figure check for a country club venue, he wanted to attend an intimate engagement party hosted at Julian's primary residence. He wanted to see the brick-and-mortar proof of my brother's alleged success. The pressure on my family reached a breaking point. They needed to produce a wealthy, independent son, and I was standing right in the middle of their stage. The ambush happened on a Wednesday evening. I came home from the office to find the dining table set with my favorite takeout from a high-end Thai restaurant downtown. My mother was arranging orchids in a vase. My father was pouring sparkling cider. Julian was notably absent, having conveniently stepped out to run an errand. This is a classic tactic. When a toxic family wants something massive from you, they try to soften the ground first. They use small, cheap gestures to buy a sense of obligation. I sat down at the table. I did not touch the food. I waited. My father cleared his throat. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a trifold brochure. He slid it across the smooth wood table toward me. It was a pamphlet for the Marriott Hotel, located 3 miles down the highway. "Chloe," my father started, his voice adopting a patronizing, gentle tone. "Your mother and I have been talking. We know you have been working incredibly hard lately. Those commercial leases take a toll. We want to treat you to a mini vacation." I looked at the brochure. Then I looked at my mother. Her smile was tight, stretched thin over obvious panic. "We booked you a luxury suite for this coming weekend," she chimed in, her pitch slightly too high. "It has a spa, room service. We paid for everything. You can check in on Friday afternoon and stay until Sunday evening. It will be so relaxing for you." I did not reach for the paper. I knew exactly what this was. "What is happening this weekend?" I asked. My mother folded her hands in her lap. "Julian is hosting Harrison and Victoria for an engagement dinner on Saturday night," she said, the words rushing out quickly. "It is a very important evening. Harrison wants to see the house. We just thought it would be best if Julian had the place to himself, to entertain, without any distractions." Distractions. That was the word she used to describe the legal owner of the property. They were not offering me a vacation. They were issuing an eviction disguised as a gift. They needed me out of sight, off the premises, so Julian could play the role of the self-made homeowner without the risk of me walking out of my bedroom and shattering the illusion. I looked at the pad thai they had bought to buy my compliance. I looked at the $50 hotel brochure they thought was a fair trade for my $650,000 house. I pushed the brochure back across the table. "I am not going to a hotel," I said. My father frowned. "Chloe, be reasonable. We are paying for it. We are asking for 2 days. Julian needs this to go smoothly." I kept my voice perfectly level. I did not raise it. I did not show anger. I showed them a calendar. "This Saturday, I am overseeing the final walkthrough for an oncology ward lease in the medical district," I explained, listing the facts slowly. "It is a 12-hour shift. I will be on my feet on a concrete subfloor from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening. When I am done, I am driving back to my house. I am going to walk through my front door. I am going to shower in my master bathroom. And I am going to sleep in my own bed." My mother's face went pale. "You cannot be here. Harrison will ask questions." "Then Julian should prepare his answers," I replied. "I am not vacating my own home so my brother can run a con on his future in-laws." I stood up from the table. Before I walked away, I delivered a final, crystal-clear boundary. "You can have the dinner," I said. "I will not interfere. But do not touch my belongings. Do not move my things to make the house look like his. Keep the guests out of my master suite and my home office." My parents stared at me. The air in the room grew heavy. Then, surprisingly, my father nodded. "Okay," he said softly. "We understand. We will make it work." They did not argue. They did not scream. They did not accuse me of ruining the family. They just nodded and started packing up the untouched Thai food. Looking back, that easy surrender was the loudest warning bell of all. When a family built on manipulation suddenly drops an argument, it does not mean they respect your boundary. It means they have found a way around it. The next 2 days were eerie. The house was spotless but silent. Julian avoided making eye contact. My mother came over to clean the baseboards and smiled at me warmly when I left for the office on Friday. There was no tension. There was only a cold mechanical precision in the way they moved around me. They were acting like a demolition crew, quietly setting charges while the building owner was looking the other way. Saturday morning arrived. I woke up at 5. The house was dark and quiet. I put on my scrubs, grabbed my leather work bag, and locked my bedroom door behind me. I drove downtown and spent the next 12 hours managing contractors, verifying HVAC requirements for medical equipment, and finalizing a multi-million-dollar corporate lease. My phone stayed silent all day. Not a single text from my mother. Not a single call from my brother. At 6:30 in the evening, I signed off on the final inspection. I got into my car. My feet were throbbing. My shoulders ached. I drove out of the city, merging onto the highway, watching the sun dip below the Chicago skyline. All I wanted was a hot shower and my bed. I pulled onto my suburban street. I parked on the street because my driveway was full of luxury cars. I walked up the concrete path to my porch. And that brings us right back to the moment the illusion shattered. That is when I stood in the carpeted hallway of my building. That is when I saw the 6 heavy-duty black trash bags dumped on the floor. That is when I saw my winter coat and my personal tax files stuffed inside them. I stood there, listening to the jazz trio playing on the other side of the oak door. I listened to the clinking glasses. I listened to my brother laughing. They did not just move my things. They did not just try to hide me. They packed up my existence. I reached out and turned the brass doorknob. It did not budge. I pulled my house key from my pocket and slid it into the cylinder. It went in halfway and stopped. I pulled the key out and looked closer. The lock was different. It was a heavy-duty commercial-grade deadbolt installed fresh into the wood. They had changed the locks on my home. And the party inside was just getting started. I stand there with my hands still hovering over the new brass deadbolt. The metal is cold against my skin. I stand there with my hands still hovering over the new smart lock. The metal is cold against my skin. Most people would pound on the wood. They would scream until their throat turned raw. They would kick the doorframe and demand entry. My family was counting on that. They wanted a scene. If I threw a tantrum in the hallway, Julian could shake his head, look at his wealthy future-in-laws, and whisper an apology about his unstable tenant. He would play the victim, and security would escort me off my own property. I refused to hand him that script. I pull my phone from my pocket. The screen glows in the dim corridor lighting. I tap my mother's name. It rings 0 times. A sharp automated beat tells me the call cannot be completed. I try my father. Same result. I try Julian. Straight to voicemail. They coordinated this. They packed my bags, changed the hardware, and severed digital communication all in the span of 12 hours. They calculated that I would be too exhausted from my hospital shift to fight back. I slide the phone back into my pocket. I look down at the heavy-duty trash bags. My dry-cleaned coats, my tax documents, my life, neatly bagged and ready for the curb. I bend down. The plastic stretches as I grip the drawstrings. I lift 2 bags over my shoulders. I grab the third with my free hand. I walk down the hall, push through the lobby doors, and step out into the freezing Chicago air. I make 3 trips. 3 silent trips from my front door to my sedan parked on the street. With every trip, the jazz music grows fainter and my mind grows sharper. I drop the final bag into the trunk. I slam it shut. The noise echoes down the quiet suburban block. I walk to the driver's side, open the door, and slide into the cold leather seat. I sit in the dark, my hands gripping the steering wheel. My fingers are trembling. It is not from the winter air. It is the raw, toxic adrenaline of absolute betrayal pumping through my veins. There is a sharp, jagged pain in my chest, a physical ache screaming at me to break down. It wants me to rest my forehead against the dashboard and sob for the parents I just lost. But I force the lump down my throat. I swallow the grief. Because right now, grief is a liability. Crying is an emotional response to a family squabble, but what just happened in that house is no longer a family squabble. It is a real estate crime. It is an illegal eviction. It is trespassing. And in my line of work, we do not cry over property disputes. We litigate them. I reach into my leather work bag and pull out my laptop. I set it on the center console. I connect to my mobile hotspot. The screen flickers to life, casting a harsh white light over the dashboard. I log into my brokerage portal. The interface is secure, tied directly to the county property database and our affiliated lending institution. My fingers fly across the keyboard. I do not search for apologies. I search for paper trails. First, the deed. I type my address into the registry. The document loads instantly. There is my name, printed in stark black ink. Sole owner. I download the PDF. Next, the property tax records. Paid in full, 3 weeks ago. From a checking account ending in 4021, my account. I download the receipt. Then, the mortgage statements. I pull the last 24 months of payment history. Every single transfer traces back to my commission earnings. Julian's name appears exactly 0 times in the county database. He does not exist on paper. But the paperwork is only half the battle. I need visual proof of the break-in. I open a new tab and log into my home security cloud server. My parents thought they were clever changing the physical lock, but they forgot I wired the front porch camera myself. I scroll back through the timeline to 1 o'clock this afternoon. I hit play. The video feeds in crisp high definition. There is my father, wearing his weekend golf sweater. He is standing on my porch, holding a power drill. He presses the bit directly into the brass cylinder of my old lock. Metal shavings fall onto the welcome mat. My mother is standing right behind him, looking nervously over her shoulder toward the street. She is holding a plastic blister pack containing the new heavy-duty deadbolt. I watch my father dismantle the hardware I paid for. I watch them breach my home. It takes him 4 minutes to drill out the core. The door swings open and they step inside. I pause the video. I take a screenshot. I save the file to my desktop. The emotional wound of watching my own parents orchestrate a break-in is deep, but I force it down. Right now, they are not my parents. They are hostile actors illegally occupying a $650,000 asset. I look at the clock on my dashboard. It is 8:15 in the evening. The party inside is peaking. The champagne is flowing. The lies are solidifying. I pick up my phone and dial a number I rarely use outside of business hours. Marcus picks up on the second ring. He is the principal owner of the brokerage and the head of the affiliated mortgage lending firm that financed my townhouse. He is a man who builds his life on ironclad contracts and despises fraud. "Chloe," he says, his voice thick with surprise. "It is Saturday night. Tell me the oncology lease did not fall through." "The lease is fine, Marcus," I reply. "The ink is dry. I am calling about a different property." I give him the address, my address. He pauses. "That is your primary residence. What is wrong?" "I need access to the firm's corporate legal counsel," I say, my tone steady and clinical. "And I need it right now." I spend the next 4 minutes laying out the facts. I do not mention my hurt feelings. I do not complain about my brother's golden child status. I deliver the raw data, the unapproved residency, the forged narrative to a wealthy developer, the drilling of the lock, the illegal eviction, the seizure of my personal property. The silence on the other end of the line stretches out. When Marcus finally speaks, His voice is devoid of its usual warmth. It is pure, concentrated ice. Your family drilled the lock on a property underwritten by my firm, he says slowly. They moved an unauthorized occupant in and locked the deed holder out. Yes. And they are throwing a party inside right now, claiming ownership to Harrison. Yes. Harrison is a developer we bid against last quarter, Marcus mutters, the pieces clicking together in his mind. Your brother is using a property financed by my firm to run a con on one of the most ruthless men in Chicago real estate. If this blows up and Harrison thinks we were complicit or even just negligent, our reputation is dirt. We lose every future bid against him. I have the deed, the tax records, and the video of the break-in saved to my desktop, I inform him. I'm sitting in my car on the street. I need to know the fastest legal route to reclaim entry without compromising my ownership standing. Do not approach the house, Marcus commands. His voice is no longer just a boss giving advice to an employee. It is a CEO protecting his empire. Do not knock. Do not alert them that you are out there. If you cause a disturbance, they will spin a domestic dispute narrative. We are elevating this immediately. This is no longer a family squabble, Chloe. This is a corporate risk management protocol. Understood. What is the play? I am calling David, Marcus says. I am sending my senior litigator to kill this fraud before it touches my firm's name. David is the firm's senior corporate litigator. He handles multi-million-dollar eviction disputes and hostile tenant removals. He does not lose. Drive down to the office, Marcus instructs. Use your key card. David and I will meet you in the conference room in 20 minutes. Bring your laptop. We are drafting a formal notice to vacate. Then we are calling the precinct. We are going to dismantle this party, brick by brick. I end the call. I look out the windshield at my townhouse. The lights are glowing warmly through the living room windows. I can see silhouettes moving inside. I see a shadow that looks like Julian, holding a glass, holding court. They think they won. They think my silence means surrender. They think I'm crying in my car, defeated and small. I put the car in drive. I pull away from the curb, leaving my stolen house behind in the rearview mirror. I am not retreating in defeat. I am retreating to forge a weapon. I navigate the empty downtown streets. The city is quiet, but my mind is running through a checklist. I pull into the underground parking garage of my brokerage firm. The concrete walls echo with the sound of my engine. I park in my reserved spot, swipe my keycard at the private elevator, and ride up to the 24th floor. The doors slide open. The office is dark, except for the lights glowing in the main conference room at the end of the glass hallway. I walk in. Marcus is sitting at the head of the long mahogany table. Next to him is David. David is the firm's senior corporate litigator. He does not work Saturday nights for residential lockouts. He is here because Marcus pulled him off a golf course to amputate a massive liability. He spent a decade dismantling fraudulent commercial leases before Marcus hired him. He does not operate on emotion. He operates on statutes, clauses, and penal codes. David has his laptop open. A portable printer is already humming on the side table. Sit down, Chloe, Marcus says. He points to the leather chair across from them. I open my work bag and set my laptop on the table. I connect to the conference screen. I pull up the folder containing the deed, the tax records, and the security footage. I hit play on the video of my father drilling the lock. David watches the screen. His expression does not change. He watches my mother hand my father the new deadbolt. He watches them breach the threshold. David stops the video. He looks at me. Did you authorize a change of locks? No, I reply. Did you give them written or verbal permission to host an event on the premises? No. I explicitly told them they could not use the property to pretend Julian owned it. David types rapidly. What your parents just did is a textbook illegal eviction. Under Illinois law, a landlord cannot change the locks on a tenant without a court order. But you are not a tenant. You are the sole deed holder. That elevates their actions from a civil dispute to criminal breaking and entering. Marcus leans forward. And the brother, What is his legal standing? I pull up the month-to-month lease I drafted weeks ago, the one Julian refused to sign. I slide the unsigned document across the table. He has no standing, I explain. He never signed a lease. He has never paid a dime in rent or utilities. But there is another layer. I open a new tab on my screen. This is where the receipt gathering becomes a weapon. I pull up the USPS delivery log for my address. Julian formally changed his mailing address to my townhouse a year ago to make his residency look official. Then I pull up the digital scans of the rent checks my parents had been mailing him. $2,000 a month, marked for housing, which he deposited into his own personal account. I print the delivery logs. I print the check scans. I print my own bank statement showing my sole payments to the mortgage company. He is receiving designated rent funds from our parents and pocketing them, I say. He is using my property to secure a fraudulent marriage to Harrison's daughter. He is running a financial con, and my parents just committed a felony to help him close the deal. David nods slowly. He takes the printed pages from the tray and lines them up next to the deed. We are not just serving an eviction notice, David states. We are drafting an immediate notice to vacate due to criminal trespass and property damage. Because they destroyed the original lock, the police can mandate their immediate removal to secure the premises for the rightful owner. David drafts the paperwork. The printer hums again, spitting out crisp white pages filled with dense legal authority. Marcus signs off as the lending institution representative, adding corporate weight to my personal claim. It is time to make the call. I do not dial 911. Pleading for help sounds desperate, and the dispatcher might classify it as a low-priority domestic dispute. Instead, I dial the direct desk line for my local suburban precinct. I know the protocol. Property managers do this all the time. A desk sergeant answers. My name is Chloe, I say, keeping my voice calm and authoritative. I am the legal owner of the property located at my address. I am currently off-site. Unauthorized individuals have drilled the locks, illegally entered my home, and are currently hosting a large gathering inside. I have the deed, the security footage of the break-in, and corporate legal counsel present. I am requesting a civil standby with 2 uniformed officers to reclaim entry and remove the trespassers. The sergeant pauses. You have video of them drilling a lock? Yes, sir. Timestamp from this afternoon. I will be arriving with my attorney in 30 minutes to execute a notice to vacate. I need officers on site to prevent a breach of the peace. The exact legal terminology works. The sergeant takes down my information and dispatches 2 cruisers to meet us at the corner of my street. I hang up the phone. The trap is set. The paperwork is finalized. I look at the clock on the wall. It is 9:30 in the evening. The party is at its peak right now. Harrison is likely asking Julian about property taxes. My mother is probably pouring more champagne. They feel safe. They feel untouchable. I stand up from the conference table. I am still wearing the wrinkled scrubs from my 12-hour hospital shift. I cannot walk into that house looking like a tired, defeated sister. I need to look like the owner. I walk over to the closet in my private office down the hall. I keep spare professional clothes there for emergency client meetings. I strip off the hospital scrubs. I pull on a sharp tailored charcoal suit. I button the crisp white silk blouse. I step into black leather heels. I brush my hair back into a tight, neat style. I look in the mirror. The woman looking back does not look like a scapegoat. She does not look like a basement tenant. She looks like a broker about to foreclose on a bad investment. I walk back to the conference room. David has placed the documents into a sleek black leather folder. He hands it to me. Marcus stands up. He adjusts his tie. He looks at David, then at me. Let us go introduce ourselves to Harrison, Marcus says. We take the elevator down to the garage. We do not take my sedan. We get into the back of Marcus's black town car. The driver pulls out onto the street, heading toward the suburbs. I sit in the back seat, the leather folder resting on my lap. The street lights flash across the dark-tinted windows. I trace the edge of the folder with my finger. My family relied on my silence for decades. They built their entire foundation on the assumption that I would always fold to avoid a scene. They assumed I would sleep in my car tonight just to keep the peace. They were about to learn that keeping the peace is a privilege for those who pay the mortgage. We are 10 minutes away. The cruisers are waiting. I am ready. The town car glides to a stop at the end of my street. The neighborhood is quiet, bathed in the soft orange glow of the streetlights. 2 police cruisers are parked flush against the curb, their engines idling. The officers are waiting outside their vehicles. I step out of the car. The cold air bites through my suit jacket, but I do not shiver. David steps out behind me, holding the black leather folder tight to his side. Marcus waits in the vehicle. This is my property to reclaim. I walk over to the officers. They assess my tailored suit and David's severe professional demeanor. I hand the lead officer, a tall man with graying hair, my driver's license and the deed. "Are you the homeowner, ma'am?" he asks, scanning the document under his flashlight. "I am," I reply. The individuals inside drilled the lock and entered without my permission. They are currently hosting an unauthorized gathering. The officer hands the deed back. He nods to his partner. "Lead the way." We walk up the concrete path. The sensory details of the night snap into hyperfocus. The dry autumn leaves crunch beneath my leather heels. The police radios emit brief, static-filled chirps. The ambient noise from the house grows louder with each step. I can hear the smooth, rhythmic sweeping of a cello mixed with the bright notes of a violin. They hired a string quartet. They hired a quartet to play in the foyer I designed. We reach the porch. The porch light illuminates the new, heavy brass deadbolt my father installed. The lock that was supposed to keep me out. The officer steps forward and signals a waiting locksmith, an older man standing by the edge of the lawn holding a heavy metal toolbox. The locksmith approaches the door. He doesn't knock. He doesn't ask for permission. He aligns a specialized drill bit against the cylinder of the new hardware. The mechanical whine of the drill cuts through the cold night air, drowning out the string quartet for 10 agonizing seconds. The brass gives way. The lock core pops out, falling onto the welcome mat with a dull thud. The officer turns the knob. The heavy oak door swings inward. The transition from the quiet street to the interior of the house is jarring. The foyer is packed. The air smells heavily of expensive cologne, roasted tenderloin, and fresh lilies. At least 75 people are standing in my living room, wearing sharp tuxedos and glittering cocktail dresses. Waiters in black vests are circulating with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. The officers step across the threshold first. Their heavy-duty boots thud loudly against the imported Brazilian walnut hardwood floors. I follow immediately behind them, with David flanking my right side. The visual impact of 2 uniformed police officers entering a high society engagement party acts like a shockwave. The string quartet stops playing mid-measure. The bow drags harshly across the cello strings, producing a jarring, discordant screech. The lively, cheerful chatter evaporates instantly. The silence that follows is not just quiet, it is suffocating. It is the heavy, thick silence of a room holding its collective breath. 75 pairs of eyes turn toward the entryway. My mother, Susan, is standing near the marble kitchen island. She is wearing a silk navy gown, holding a crystal champagne flute. When she sees the officers, and then sees me standing behind them in my charcoal suit, her hand spasms. The flute slips from her fingers. It hits the floor and shatters. The sharp crack echoes in the silent room. Tiny shards of glass and expensive champagne scatter across the $12 per square foot Brazilian walnut flooring that I paid for. My father, Richard, is standing near the fireplace. His face drains of all color, turning an ashen gray. He looks from me to the drilled-out lock on the floor, his jaw slightly slack. Then I see Julian. He is standing next to Harrison, Victoria's wealthy father. Julian is wearing a bespoke tuxedo. He is holding a glass of scotch. For a split second, I see raw, unadulterated panic flash in his eyes. The illusion he spent 2 years building is standing right in front of him, flanked by law enforcement. But Julian's survival instinct is built entirely on manipulation and aggression. He hands his scotch to a nearby waiter, squares his shoulders, and storms toward the foyer. His face contorts into a mask of righteous indignation. He plans to play the role of the outraged homeowner dealing with a trespasser. He steps directly in front of me, trying to use his height to block my view of the guests. He leans down, his face inches from mine, and whispers frantically through his teeth. "What the hell are you doing, Chloe?" he hisses, his breath smelling of expensive alcohol. "Get out of here right now. You are ruining everything. I will pay you back tomorrow. Just leave." He reaches out to grab my upper arm, intending to physically steer me back out the door. He assumes I will shrink. He assumes I will avoid the public embarrassment. He assumes wrong. Before his hand can touch my jacket, the lead officer steps between us. He places a firm, authoritative hand squarely on Julian's chest, stopping his forward momentum instantly. "Step back, sir," the officer commands, his voice carrying clearly across the silent living room. "Keep your hands to yourself." Julian stumbles back half a step, his eyes wide. "Officer, there is a misunderstanding," he stammers, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "This is my house. This woman is my unstable sister. She is a tenant who lives in the basement. She is having a mental episode. You need to escort her off the property immediately." The audacity is staggering. He is standing in the house I bought, staring at the police and doubling down on the lie. He expects the uniform to defer to his tailored tuxedo. I do not look at my brother. I do not look at my parents, who are frozen in horror. I look directly at the lead officer. My voice is perfectly level, projecting clarity and absolute control. "Officer," I say, ensuring the entire room can hear me. "There is no misunderstanding. I am the sole legal owner of this property. The man standing in front of you does not hold the deed. He does not pay the mortgage, and he has never signed a lease. He, along with my parents, drilled the lock on my front door this afternoon and illegally occupied my home." I gesture toward the crowd of stunned guests. "These individuals are trespassers," I state, "and I want them removed from my house." The collective gasp from the 75 guests sounds like the rushing of a sudden wind. Julian's face turns a dark, furious red. The trap has sprung. The conflict has moved from the shadows of our family dynamic directly into the blinding light of legal scrutiny. And the audience is watching the Golden Boy's entire world begin to shatter. The silence in the room stretches, thick and electric. Nobody moves. Julian's face is a portrait of cornered desperation. He opens his mouth to speak, but before he can formulate another lie, Victoria steps forward from the crowd. She is wearing an elegant silk gown, the massive diamond ring Julian bought with my money catching the harsh light of the police flashlights. She looks confused, her brow furrowed as she glances between Julian, the officers, and me. "Julian," Victoria says, her voice trembling slightly. "What is going on? Why did your tenant bring the police to our engagement party?" She still believes the narrative. She still thinks I am the unstable squatter living in the basement. I do not look at my parents. I do not look at Julian. I step past the lead officer, closing the distance between myself and the woman my brother intends to marry. I stop 3 feet in front of her. "Victoria," I say, my voice projecting with the practiced clarity I use in corporate boardroom negotiations. "I am not a tenant. I do not live in the basement. My name is Chloe, and I am the sole legal owner of this property." Julian lunges forward again. "She is lying," he yells, his voice cracking with panic. "Do not listen to her. She is mentally ill. I pay the mortgage. I own this place." I do not flinch. I simply reach out and take the sleek black leather folder from David's hands. I flip it open. I do not hand the folder to Julian. I do not hand it to my parents. I hand it directly to Victoria's father, Harrison. He is standing right behind his daughter, his shrewd eyes taking in the entire scene with calculating precision. A man who built an empire in commercial development knows the difference between a hysterical claim and legal documentation. Harrison takes the folder. He opens it. The first page is the notarized property deed filed with the county. He scans it quickly. He sees my name. He sees the absence of Julian's name. He is not an investor, I state, keeping my eyes fixed on Victoria while her father reads. He has been unemployed for 2 years. He does not pay a mortgage. He has been living in my guest room rent-free while I cover the $650,000 loan. It is a forgery, Julian screams, pointing a shaking finger at the documents. She forged that. Officer, arrest her for fraud. David steps forward, moving smoothly into the line of sight. He is wearing a tailored suit that costs more than Julian's entire fake persona. I am David Miller, senior litigator for the lending institution that underwrites this property, David announces, his voice cutting through Julian's hysteria like a scalpel. We learned of this unauthorized residency tonight. My firm does not tolerate our assets being used to facilitate financial fraud, Harrison. We pulled these documents directly from the county registry and our own financial servers to ensure you knew the truth immediately. Harrison flips to the second page. It is the log of the rent checks my parents had been sending Julian. For the past 24 months, I continue, addressing the entire room now. My parents have been giving Julian $2,000 a month intended for rent. He pocketed every cent. He used that stolen money to lease the BMW in the driveway and buy the engagement ring on your finger. Victoria looks down at her hand. She looks at the diamond as if it suddenly burned her skin. Susan pushes her way to the front of the crowd. Tears are streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. She grabs Harrison's sleeve, her fingers digging into the expensive fabric. "Harrison, please," my mother begs, her voice dissolving into pathetic sobs. "It was just a misunderstanding. We were just trying to help him get a start. He loves your daughter. We just wanted him to look presentable for your family." Do not let Chloe ruin this. She has always been jealous of him. Harrison looks down at my mother's hand on his sleeve. He does not pull away violently. He simply stares at it until she lets go, stepping back as if he had physically pushed her. You changed the locks on your own daughter so your son could fake his net worth, Harrison says, his voice dangerously low. I do not give them room to breathe. I signal David, who turns his laptop toward Harrison and Victoria. He hits play on the security footage. The video plays in the dead silent room. Everyone watches my father drill the brass cylinder. Everyone watches my mother hand him the new smart lock. Everyone watches them breach my front door. That is breaking and entering, David states flatly. And because my client never issued a legal eviction notice, it constitutes an illegal seizure of property under state law. My father finally speaks. He looks at me, his eyes wide and hollow. Chloe, he whispers, we did not mean to hurt you. We packed your things carefully. We were going to pay for a hotel. You dumped my life in garbage bags in the hallway, I reply, the facts dropping like heavy stones. You severed my digital access. You locked me out in the freezing cold after a 12-hour shift. You did not pack my things carefully. You erased me. Julian tries one last desperate tactic. He turns to Victoria, grabbing both of her hands. Vicky, please. He pleads, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper. I did it for us. I did it because your father expects so much. I wanted to give you the life you deserve. We can still get married. We can figure this out. Victoria pulls her hands out of his grip. She takes a slow step back, putting distance between herself and the man she thought she knew. She looks at him, not with anger, but with absolute disgust. You did not do this for us, Victoria says quietly. You did this because you are a fraud. You lied about your job. You lied about your house. You stole from your sister. You let your parents commit a crime for you. She reaches up and pulls the diamond ring off her finger. She does not hand it to him gently. She drops it onto the Brazilian walnut floor. It hits the wood with a sharp click, rolling slightly before coming to a stop near the shattered champagne glass. I am leaving, Victoria says. She turns to her father. Harrison nods once. He closes the black leather folder, handing it back to David. He does not say a single word to Julian or my parents. He simply turns and walks toward the front door, his daughter trailing closely behind him. The departure of the wealthy developer and his daughter breaks the spell holding the rest of the guests. The room erupts into a chaotic murmur. People begin setting their champagne glasses down on any available surface. They grab their coats. They avoid making eye contact with my family. They stream toward the exit, desperate to escape the proximity of a felony and the stench of public humiliation. The engagement is over. The high society lie is dead. But the legal consequences are just beginning. I turn back to the lead officer, who is standing near the doorway, watching the wealthy guests flee the scene. "Officer," I say, my voice steady. "The trespassers are still in my home. I want them removed, now." The front door remains open. The cold Chicago wind blows through the foyer, chilling the air, but nobody moves to shut it. The exodus is swift and silent. High society operates on reputation, and standing in a room with 2 uniformed officers and a forged deed is a stain nobody wants. I watch a woman in a velvet gown step carefully around the shattered crystal on the hardwood. I watch men in tailored tuxedos avoid making eye contact with my father. They file out into the night. Car doors slam up and down the street. Engines turn over. Headlights sweep across the living room windows as the luxury vehicles speed away. Even the catering staff stops serving. The waiters quietly set down their silver trays of miniature crab cakes and begin packing their warming stations. They recognize a sinking ship. They want their payment, and they know the people who hired them are no longer the ones in charge. Within 10 minutes, the house is empty of guests. The string quartet is gone, leaving behind empty chairs and music stands. The only people left in the living room are me, David, the 2 police officers, and my family. The illusion has evaporated. Now we are dealing with the raw, ugly reality of property law. The lead officer steps forward. He looks at my father. Richard, the man who spent decades lecturing me about responsibility, shrinks under the officer's gaze. "Here is the situation," the officer states, his tone devoid of sympathy. "You 2 drilled a lock on a property you do not own. That is destruction of property and breaking and entering. Those are felonies. I can place both of you in handcuffs right now. As for the son, since he has established residency, I cannot legally remove him tonight without a court-ordered eviction." Julian's head snaps up. A sickening smirk of triumph flickers across his face. He thinks he found a loophole. He thinks he gets to stay. David steps forward, seamlessly cutting off Julian's brief moment of victory. "The officer is correct," David says smoothly, resting his hands on the marble island. "Civil law protects your residency, Julian. But civil law does not protect your parents from felony trespassing. And it certainly does not protect you from federal fraud charges." Julian's smirk vanishes. "What are you talking about?" David opens his black leather folder again. He taps the stack of printed rent checks. "You have been receiving $2,000 a month for housing. You deposited those funds into a personal account without declaring it as income, all while using a fraudulent address to solicit a marriage from a major developer. We call that wire fraud and tax evasion. If my client proceeds, the IRS and the FBI will freeze your accounts by Monday morning." My mother gasps. She presses her hands over her mouth, her polished suburban facade completely shattered. David closes the folder. The loud snap of the leather echoes in the quiet kitchen. "Here is the deal," I say, taking over the negotiation. My voice is cold iron. I look directly at Julian. "You have a choice. You can assert your tenant rights and stay tonight. If you do, I press charges against Mom and Dad right now. They will ride in the back of that cruiser to the station, and David will hand this financial dossier over to the federal authorities tomorrow." I pause, letting the weight of the federal prison system settle over them. "Or," I continue, "you sign a voluntary surrender of tenancy right here, right now. You pack whatever fits in your personal vehicles, and you walk out my front door in the next 30 minutes. You leave, and I drop the criminal charges. It is not an eviction. It is a legally binding ultimatum. Toxic families rely on a shared delusion to function. They need a scapegoat to carry the weight of their failures. With me standing safely behind the shield of corporate counsel and law enforcement, they cannot attack me. I am untouchable. So, the delusion collapses, and without a scapegoat, they turn on each other. The implosion happens in seconds. Susan drops her hands from her face and turns on Julian, her golden boy, the son she just committed a felony to protect. "This is your fault!" Susan screams, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "We risked everything for you. We paid your rent. We bought that ring. You told us Victoria's father would give you a job. You told us we would be set. You ruined it! You aimed too high and you got us caught!" Julian sneers. The charming, sophisticated mask he wore for Victoria vanishes, revealing the entitled, petulant child underneath. "I got us caught," Julian yells back, stepping toward her. "You are the ones who did a sloppy job with the lock. You left her things in the hallway where anyone could see them. If you had just handled her properly, she would have stayed at the hotel. You failed me. You always do a half-measured job." Richard steps between them, his face purple with rage. "I drained my savings for you," Richard snarls at his son. "I paid $2,000 a month for you to sit in a bedroom and play video games. I leased that BMW in the driveway. I put my name on the financing. If I go to jail, I lose my pension. Grab your things. We are leaving. The 30-minute timer is ticking." Panic replaces their anger. They scramble. Julian sprints down the hallway toward the guest room. Susan and Richard rush toward the entryway closet to grab their coats. I walk over to the kitchen island. The marble is cool under my fingertips. I look at the catering spread left behind. Bottles of imported champagne sit in silver ice buckets. My parents bought this champagne to toast to a future built on my stolen assets. I reach out and pick up an open bottle of Dom Perignon. I find a clean crystal flute sitting next to the floral arrangement. I pour myself a glass. The bubbles fizz softly. I take a sip. It tastes crisp. It tastes like victory. I stand there and watch the execution of their sentence. They do not have suitcases. They did not plan to leave tonight. Susan runs to the pantry and pulls out a box of heavy-duty black trash bags. The exact same brand they used to bag up my dry-cleaned coats and tax files just hours ago. She tosses a roll to Julian. I watch Julian stuff his bespoke tuxedo jackets into a garbage bag. I watch him throw his expensive cologne bottles, his designer sneakers, and his video game controllers into the plastic. He drags the bag down the hallway. The plastic snags on the corner of the baseboard, tearing open. A pair of leather loafers spills out onto the Brazilian walnut floor. He curses, kneeling to shove them back inside. "Keep moving," the lead officer commands, checking his watch. 15 minutes. Susan is crying hysterically as she shoves her own purse and the leftover catering boxes into another bag. Richard is carrying an armful of Julian's electronics, his face tight with silent fury. They walk past me. They do not say a single word. They cannot look me in the eye. They are carrying the heavy, tangible proof of their own failure. They walk out the front door. They load the garbage bags into the trunk of the leased BMW and my father's sedan. The wind catches the torn plastic, whipping it around in the dark. I finish my champagne. I set the glass down on the marble. Julian is the last one out. He stands in the doorway, holding a final hefty bag over his shoulder. He looks at me. He wants to say something. He wants to deliver a parting shot, to reclaim some shred of dominance. But David takes a step forward, and the officer rests a hand on his utility belt. Julian closes his mouth. He turns around. He walks out into the cold. The officer reaches out and pulls the heavy oak door shut. The temporary metal latch clicks into the damaged frame. The house is silent again. But it is a different kind of silence. It is not the tense, suffocating quiet of a hostage situation. It is the deep, peaceful stillness of a fortress that has just been purged of its invaders. I am standing in my kitchen. The intruders are gone. The legal boundary is drawn in permanent ink. The war is over. And I am the only one left standing inside the castle. It has been exactly 6 months since I stood in my foyer and watched the police escort my family out into the cold. Without my parents subsidizing his life and Victoria's family wealth to coast on, Julian's fake empire collapsed in days. The BMW was repossessed. The wedding was canceled. My parents drained their retirement to fund his lies, and last month they were forced to sell their home to avoid bankruptcy. Today, all 3 of them live crammed in a small 2-bedroom apartment. They finally got the permanent, dependent son they always wanted. I did not stay in the townhouse. I sold it at the peak of the market for a $150,000 profit.
I took that capital and bought a secluded property up north. The driveway is gated and the locks are biometric.
My peace of mind is my primary asset.
I survived the fallout, and I walked away with 3 unbreakable rules.
Rule 1. DNA is not a debt.
Biology is a random lottery. It does not give anyone a free pass to exploit your hard work.
You owe loyalty only to those who respect your well-being.
Rule 2. A boundary without a penalty is merely a suggestion.
Toxic people do not respect your feelings. They respect your power.
Telling my family to leave was a suggestion. Calling the police was the penalty.
Rule 3. Financial independence is your strongest armor.
I survived that night because I held the mortgage and kept my own bank accounts.
When you pay your own way, nobody can threaten you with homelessness. Today, my phone is quiet. My house is secure. I broke the cycle the moment I refused to be their backup plan. You can break yours too. My name is Chloe, and thank you for tuning into Sweet Karma Life. Drop a crown emoji in the comments if you have ever had to enforce a brutal boundary to save yourself. Hit subscribe and remember, never apologize for holding the keys to your own life. I will see you in the next one.